Hi everyone, my name is Wachin Emiremeka and I'm the founder and CEO of Kitovu Technology Company, a startup that builds climate smart farm and post harvest infrastructure for African agriculture. Today, I'm here to take you on the topic Nigeria's food security challenges and wealth creation. But first, here are the outlines of what we'll be talking about today. First, we are going to look at the definition of some terms. Then we are going to look at the concepts of food security. Then we'll look at the food security pillars, as well as the factors that create food insecurity. Then we are going to look at the opportunities, or what I call challenge to wealth. And of course, we'll look at module questions for this module. So, the main terms we're looking at is wealth. What does it mean to be wealthy? Wealth is not just in the amount of cash you have. Wealth is speaking to your ability to do what you want to do without any restraints. Yeah. And then food security. We'll look at that more in depth in the next slide. What is food security? Food security is a state, a state of being where people can be able to access food that are affordable and that meet their requirements. So, according to the Committee on World Food Security, food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. So just having any kind of food is not necessarily food security. It has to be nutritious, it has to be sufficient, it has to be safe, and not only does it meet your dietary needs, it also meets your food preferences. Now, food security has several levels. There is a level where, we say that there is very, very low food security. And that's like the worst of them all. It's when somebody cannot even afford anything to eat or cannot access any food to eat. And then there is the level of low food security. There is the level of marginal food security. And then there is the high food security, which is where every nation optimally should be and works towards being. But as it were, today, the question that is at the back of our minds is Nigeria food secure? We'll find answers to that question as we go on. Now let's look at the three pillars of food security. One is availability, the second is access, and the third is utilization. Let's look at each and every one of them in depth. In terms of availability, look at things like production, the things that affect it: production, processing, water and soil management, trade, and stockpiling. Recently, we've had an issue with the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. As a result, production is at an all-time low because trade and stockpiling of inputs like fertilizer that is needed, has been quite very, very difficult. Now, sometimes we have issues around flooding or drought, which limits production. So all these are factors that affect availability as a pillar of food security. And then the second pillar is access. The factors that affect it are transportation, distribution, marketing, affordability, and purchasing power. When any of all this is limited, the access is also limited. So there might be food available, but if the person who wants to buy the food doesn't have the purchasing power to buy the food, then the person cannot be said to be food secure. There might be food available, but if there is no means of transportation to move it from the area of production to the point where it is to be consumed, you cannot say that there is food security. And so it's not enough for food to be available. In Nigeria, some kinds of food are available, but there is difficulty getting into the market, which is why we suffer very high post-harvest losses. The third one is utilization. The factors that affect it is good health indicators. If you are sick, you cannot eat as optimally as you would. So when a country has a lot of sick people, then it's not said to have food security. So food security is all encompassing. Somebody might have food available, can buy it, but it's not nutritious food. That is not food security. If standards of food safety and quality are not taken, the person doesn't have access to clean water, if the environment where the person buys the food or eats the food is not meeting basic sanitary conditions, then there is no food security. So you can see that this is very, very encompassing. And that brings me back to the first question I asked. Is Nigeria food secure? Let's take a look at certain food items and look at how Nigeria does with respect to them. Now, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, in the first quarter of 2019, right, we imported over 236 billion of foodstuff, representing about 6.4% of all imports. In the first quarter alone, we spent 236 billion. Let us sink in. Now, somebody might well say, well, we can't produce everything. You're right. But if it's essential items, you're in trouble, because before any country will export, they will first of all make sure that they are able to feed their citizens. So for any food item, any consumable that you import, you are at the mercy of the exporter, because he can change his mind. Now let's look at how we fed. Nigeria is over 190 million. Recent estimates puts us at over 200 million. We have about 13.9 million children who have stunted growth, and 3.4 million of them are wasted due to poor nutrition. Now, let's look a little deeper at what are some of the essential items and how we are playing them. It's estimated that Nigeria requires about 200 million chickens annually. As of today, we produce about 140 million, which means there's a shortfall about 60 million chickens. Now, that's an opportunity right there. We require about 4.7 million metric tons of wheat, but we only produce 60,000 metric tons. Essentially, we have a shortfall of over 4.6 million metric tons of wheat. No wonder the price of bread is skyrocketing every day. We require about 2.2 metric tons of tomato, but produce only about 800,000 metric tons. That's a shortfall of over 1.4 million metric tons as shortfall. And that's not consider the fact that we're one of the largest producers of tomato in the world. But again, it speaks to how low our productivity is and the high level of post-harvest losses, which can be as high as 60% for tomato. Again, we require about 2.7 million metric tons of fish, but we only produce about 800,000 metric tons of fish, representing a shortfall of about 1.9 million metric tons of fish. Now, as of today, because the government has concessioned or sold off its warehouses and silos, we don't have enough strategic food reserves in case of emergency. And we saw that during the COVID-19 period. So looking at all this, Nigeria cannot in any way be said to be food sufficient or food secure. Now, what are the factors that cause food insecurity? Some of them are, political factors, right? Issues around conflict, lack of the enabling infrastructure, both farm and post-harvest infrastructure. They are political factors. And of course, there are economic factors, which speaks to, income levels, access to markets, availability of farm inputs, inflation, the nature of farm sizes we have in terms of, the fragmented nature of farm holdings in Nigeria. There is, innovation. The more the innovation, the more the technology that a nation can bring to bear in its food production and supply chain processes, the more it can tackle the issues of food insecurity, and the more it can gravitate towards being a food secure nation. Whereas there are lots of technologies, adoption is a huge problem right now. And then there are just social cultural, issues. The limited education of the smallholder farmers. 80% of all the food we eat is produced by smallholder farmers. Now, when you put that into consideration and realize that these guys represent the largest number of uneducated demographic, you understand why, there is a lot of challenge with respect to good agri-practice knowledge amongst them. And when they don't have the requisite good agri-practice knowledge, it's very, very difficult for them to, produce optimally. All these things, including government policies, which are want to suffer somersaults here and there, all contribute to the level of high food insecurity in Nigeria. Now, a man named Otumba Gaddafi, he once said that shit business is good business. And you know why? He essentially underscored the fact that wherever there is a problem, there is a huge opportunity there as well. And so we've looked at a lot of the problems facing the Nigerian agricultural sector that is, sort of creating the challenge of food insecurity for us. And we've, spotted them as opportunity areas for wealth creation. And for some of these areas, we already have organizations that are building critical, solutions, farm and post-harvest infrastructure to solve those problems. And that's one of the reasons why we came about the micro enterprise campaign. Now, here are some of the opportunity areas we've curated where you can take advantage of. Of course, down the line, you are going to have much more in-depth understanding about what you are going to do, areas where you can create opportunities for yourself. But look at this as a way to jog your interest. First of all is the area of financial services. As of today, over 38% of Nigerians are financially excluded. Now, consider that Nigeria is over 200 million. That means that we are talking about circa 76 million Nigerians that are financially excluded. A huge chunk of those people are smallholder farmers. Now, there are brands and organizations that have created financial infrastructure that you can take advantage to create your own business, right? Around providing access to financing for farmers by creating investment opportunities for people. Now, there is that of provision of farm infrastructure and mechanization services. Bear in mind that only 3% of arable land is mechanized, and only 1% of arable land is irrigated. Now, again, there are organizations that build the necessary infrastructure that will allow you offer farmers, mechanization as a service, farm infrastructure as a service, right? Technology infrastructure as a service. And you can take advantage of that if that is something that speaks to you. Perhaps you live in the urban areas Again, there are organizations that have built the necessary infrastructure that will enable you to be able to connect the last mile, to build a business around the distribution of foodstuff from point of production and from point of manufacturing to the end user. And then there is the one of commodities aggregation and logistics, basically trying to connect farm produce to large-scale processors and producers, as well as putting in place the necessary logistics. Lastly, there is the one of facilitating the sales of inputs and agriculture service provision. Service provision like spraying, like planting. These are some opportunity areas that will not only allow you to create wealth for yourself, but will also help us strengthen food security as a nation. Now, I want you to think about this and think about other opportunity areas that are out there. The chance is that there are organizations that have already created solutions that we can work together on to unbundle and unlock for smallholder farmers. Now, we've come to the end of this module. Think about what it means to be food secure and what food security is. Think about what the three pillars of food insecurity is. Think about what three opportunities for wealth creation you see that resonates with you, and what three challenges make Nigeria food insecure. Think about the role you can play today and how you can help create opportunities, not just for Nigerian farmers, but the society as a whole. And as you do that, think about how you fit into all this. I'll see you as you work towards building your own business. Thank you.